nothing, nothing. Um, One of my colleagues likes to say that St. Martin is not a real place. And I didn't understand what he meant the first time or the first couple of times. But lately, I know exactly where he's coming from. Do you still want to, yeah, do you still want to be in that mix? You know what I mean?
I think we have to. I think we set a different sort of standard in
Yes, you
terms
do.
of representation, in terms of speaking and presenting, and just coming from a point of just telling people the truth and just being honest with them. Because a lot of times people always say, "Oh, politicians lie and such," and a good example is at the midst of COVID, like in the summer that year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, we could walk outside, so it was
Yeah.
relatively further along in the lockdown. And I think that the previous administration, as well as others, they were not the only ones
Mm-hmm.
in the region that were kind of saying, we're gonna get out of this. It's gonna be okay, and it's good. By the summer it'll be sorted, and so by the end of the year it'll be good. And people were asking me, and a guy stopped me and he said, "MP, you think that by the summer we should be good, right? By the end of the year, 2020, we should be back to normal?" And I said, actually, no. I said, this is going to be about the next 3-4 years. We're going to be dealing with the fallout, so to speak, of
Mm-hmm. Right.
COVID. And he just looked at me like, but that's not
What I'm
what I'm
hearing.
hearing. And I said, I get it, but me, I am opposition. I don't have to tell no comforting lie. I'm just going to tell you the truth. Opposition or
Yeah.
coalition, either way, I'm going to say what it is, because you can't prepare your life on a comforting lie. You can't plan for what may
Yeah.
come on if you don't have all of what's going to come.
Exactly.
So I think for me, it's and I think that for the whole party, it's been about being realistic, even if it doesn't sound nice.
Right.
That's how it goes. Yeah.
Doesn't need a minister, especially doesn't need to know his ministry like the back of his hand,
Mm-hmm.
but make sure that every member of your cabinet does.
Yeah.
You know, it is nothing wrong. You young people, I like to say, you young people, you young people think that you all know it all. So you all don't need the advice of retired, or
Yeah.
veterans. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I tell them, no, it's always good to have at least one older person
For sure.
in.
Yeah.
When I started working as a senior manager at AUC, I had a mentor, and I was asking him questions about the medical university. I never worked in medicine before, so I had to learn all of these different components of operations and medicine. And I had a management book where I was reading how to successfully manage senior positions. And one of the most important things that I got out of that book was looking for custodians of knowledge. And the custodians of knowledge were people who had experience in the organization, 10 plus, 15 plus, 20 plus. And you sit down with them, and those persons are going to guide you throughout your experience, throughout your management of your team. And that's what I did. I sat down with a secretary that had 20 years work, 19 years working at AUC, and I sat down with someone that had 20 years working at AUC, and that's what I use for me to understand how to manage medical operations. And it took me 3 months of a learning curve to get all of the components, all of the moving parts of managing a medical operation. So I totally agree. You have to marry succession plans with knowledge transfer, making sure that the person who has all of that information, that there's a 5-year plan where they're just transferring that knowledge
Yeah.
until they're ready to, transition into the next stage of their career.
Like, well, how do we do this? And then, well, I think back then, so and so, and you saw that, I heard that then even from a government side, you had persons that were there in the Netherlands Antilles days handling things like protocol and how does the flag have to do this and all of that. And now it's kind of like, sometimes it seems a little ad hoc, like, I don't know, because nobody, and I always say, why we are so hesitant to write things down. Just write it down.
That's
Write
right.
down how it went. My this is not even in cooking, it's not like when you watch your grandmother and she just seems to know how much. And
Yeah.
I just watch and I'm like, okay, two shakes of the cinnamon, right? Because they know it by muscle memory.
Exactly.
But someone had to tell them,
Exactly.
and someone had to tell that person, and so forth. And I think for us now to enshrine all of that knowledge, because it's so much, like Nelly says, you have to just write down a plan, just right. When I think from even policies, just processes, procedures, like The first thing I did, I sat and I said to the technician, I'm like, how do you install this? And he's like, what do you mean? I said, what is the steps? Okay, well, first you have to go on the roof. I said, okay, step one, climb to the roof. And then I said, step two, he was like, what? I'm like, look, for future technicians, because you're approaching 50. You won't be here and be able to do this job anymore. So you are the best, you were the neatest, the cleanest, the best one. You have it all laid out in your mind. I need it laid out on paper so that when I get young kids in here, I can just give this and then this and say, this is your Bible. Right. And this is what you need to do to be the best technician you can be. And I think even from anywhere in the world, any job, any position, any organization, that's how it has to go.
If you don't have tourism, tourists that have light to give safety, so the GB effect was one of the things where don't go to St. Martin, they always have blackouts. Yeah. Now you're going to start reading, don't go to St. Martin, they're killing everyone. And you're going to destroy your economy. Now, if we want a lesson in destruction, go to Jamaica. See what happened in the 70s when they were feuding and Bob Marley was trying to bring them together, but everybody was running because they were killing each other wild. Right. You see, gang violence is something that you cannot control as easy as you believe. You can put a lot of bodies on the street, but they have their own codes, they have their own laws they live by. That's why you always hear people talking about the law in the courtroom and the law of the streets. Because they are different laws. They're totally different. But the effect that this can have, remember, this whole shooting that occurred over the weekend is now seemingly gang related to the 6 and the 7s. And this is becoming more and more dangerous because these are gangs that are now putting out hits in other countries than where they originated from. So it isn't only that the gangs are here, they are throughout the Caribbean. So it makes it a very dangerous situation. I nearly, I don't like to curb and say you can't come or you can't come. They have done it here before. Right. But clearly they slacked on checking who they were letting in. The gentleman is well known in his home country. He's supposed to be in courts. He's wanted for drug trafficking and other things. So you don't know what this shooting might have been about. Right. It leaves a lot of things open, but I think the government is going to have to clamp down on leaving in certain artists with certain messages. And you can speak of a democracy, you can speak of all your freedoms that you have, but bullets don't have eyes. When innocent people, look at the whole Trump rally, who died? A fireman that left a wife and 2 children behind that had nothing to do with whatever it was. And this is the danger with where we are now going to find ourselves. Look, if gangs were rooting out gangs, that's one thing. Right. Families will cry. But when you start shooting wild and innocent people, you're going to hurt the nation, you're going to hurt their economy. And I think that's where I am now heading to. The economy. How do we protect the economy? So we're going to do a bunch of gun searches and pick up all the guns and find the origins. And then what? And then what? Because you can take 1,000 guns off the street. It's going to be replenished by 1,000 guns. We need to be able to say, okay, how do we stop the guns coming into the country? And I don't want to say Customs ain't doing a good job, because Customs is doing a hell of a job. But again, they're undermanned. You have the Coast Guard. You have other people we are bringing in. Maybe, let me just say this clear. Maybe it's time to stop worrying about the politicians and worry what really happening in this country, because they have put 25 million euros a year into seeing how they can lock up the politicians because they're so bad. Politicians ain't bringing in no guns. Let me get clear on this. Said they're doing this, said they're doing that, but they ain't bringing in guns. Right. They're running drugs. So you need to focus on what's hurting this country. And it is not politicians, because the politicians in Martin are just like those in Holland. Let me not make no mistake. We govern the way we believe we should govern. And some like it and some don't like it. It's the same like when you debate leadership. Because, again, leadership is going to play a role in how we move forward and how we deal with these crises. You can have the Mother Teresa leadership of kindness. You can have the forgiveness leadership of Nelson Mandela. I will forgive you for what you have done to me. You have different ways. But we need right now a leadership that is totally different and understands, how do I bring back stability to this country? Because this country is as unstable as it can come right now. Absolutely. Remember, When we talk leadership, you got to think on a few characteristics. You cannot have impulsive decision making because you're angry of what's happening or you believe that only you know. Remember, dialogue is something that brings. You saw that show last week in Parliament? That was a show. That was a show. That wasn't reality no more for me. I understand politics well. And there was a whole discussion about who was right. Was it the Prime Minister or was it the Minister of Justice? My analysis is very simple. Both were right. Why? Because there was a decision taken on Tuesday. That is correct. The decision was no more public meetings, no more gatherings at the polls. We're going to review the billboards that are being placed.
Right.
That was a decision taken. No ifs and buts. They were all there. Everybody agreed. What did not happen was the formalization of the decision by having a new MBA made up and placed in the National Gazette stating this and this and this can happen. But they nearly made it look as if, oh, Luke did something on his own and the Prime Minister said, no, the Council of Ministers made a decision. Let us not confuse things because that's what those boys are over there doing now, trying to confuse the public, rile up the public and try to mislead what's really happening. And that's not true because these are things that the safety of the country is directly at stake.
Right.
Now, it's easy to say, oh, it's not political. This shooting wasn't political. We don't know. We don't know its origin. All we know is 5 men were gunned down at 4:10 in the morning in Maho.
Right.
That we know.
Your social and health insurance is your social and health insurance.
Are you SXV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXV is cardless. Request your My SXV account today and enter the virtual office of SXV. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
Your social and health insurance is.
Is it possible that a permit given by the previous administration for a building with 7 stories can be limited still to 4 stories?
Yes, so indeed, it depends on what period legally. So there's, of course, the legal issues. So there's a legal issue of if the permit period has passed, government then is continuous. So it can't be that because I come in and I see something wrong with it, I can just pull the permit simply because it means that the government will have, of course, have financial ramifications, possibly court cases against it, litigation. What we can do, of course, is look at how we can, what new measures we can put in place to basically put into question where all the process is followed. For example, many people don't know, you have to actually publish these kinds of permits in the national, the Landscourant, so the National Gazette. Was it timely published? Did persons have time to give complaint or sort of give their sort of objections to the building actually happening? If that's happened, for example, after the fact of the building happening, then these are the spaces that we within Bromley can look and say, okay, something didn't go right here, and based on that, let's bring in the person, see how we can adjust and how we can go forward. But I fundamentally believe that if there's no justification properly towards a deviation from the policy, that's something that needs to have significant insight, and it has my attention.
But that leaves the issue with the National Gazette that for no one it's really visible what the permit was given for. It just says permit given, but it doesn't say a 7-story building or a 6-story building on the beach,
Yeah.
for instance, or a parking garage in the beach and a swimming pool in the beach.
No, and on that point, and I'll be brief on this last point, and on this point is that I think we've had the discussion within VROMI as well. How do we take the National Gazette, which, let's be very honest, isn't being read by the average person, how do we make that more sort of tangible for everybody? And also, too, how much can we put forward in terms of public information? Because, of course, building permits are public information. People can always request. But once it is published, you can request a copy of the building permit. But of course, if you're not reading the National Gazette, which many people are not, you're not going to be aware of it until you start seeing a building come up. So how do we bridge that gap and make government more transparent? That has my attention as well, and something we're looking at to see how we can also publish this somewhere else except the National Gazette. If it needs necessary legal changes to make that happen, we'll address that. But I think for the short term, given the rampant development that's happening, given the limited space, given the very heavy strain on infrastructure, I think we have to come with a practical solution on how we can address sustainable development, and that is what I'm focused on in this period.
Today we gather to honor a remarkable milestone of 35 years of dedicated service by you, our exceptional security officers. These, as brave individuals, you are the frontline defenders for us, ensuring our safety and security every single day. Your unwavering commitment and diligence have not only protected us, but also instilled a profound sense of trust and peace in our environment, which is the government buildings. To all of you here today, I want to say thank you for your outstanding services and dedication. Your hard work does not go unnoticed, and today we celebrate your invaluable contributions. Congratulations, and at this time I will call on the Prime Minister to render his remarks.
For me, of course, it's a great honor to be here, sharing this great moment with all of you. We have here in our presence Mr. Labega, Mr. Ekema. We have also Mr. Lake, Mr. Boosman, and Mr. Hughes. And also we have next to us here Mr. Thomas. They're all 2 new faces, actually, and 3 old faces, as we say. Great. In the first place, I would like to not congratulate you, but thank you for your years of dedication to our country, St. Martin, and to our people. It shows an enormous commitment to stand up 35 years to come to your workplace, and actually as a civil servant, your task is to serve the people of this country. And you have done this for 35 consecutive years. It shows your discipline, your commitment, and actually your love for not only your work as a person, enjoying your work, but also your love to serve your country. I think you, 3 of you, are from the generation that you are proud to be a civil servant. Being a civil servant used to be an enormous honor, to be part of a community serving your people in the position of a civil servant. With the years, it became a little difficult to interpret the value of being a civil servant, but I do believe that you guys are really the generation that really understands the definition of being a civil servant. Next to that, you have been covering a very important area for our community, being the security aspect. And especially nowadays, we all start to realize what you have been doing in the 35 years, because now security is coming very close to all of us, seeing the developments in our country.
It's going to be very short. I started working with government August 1st, 1986. That makes me about 39 years. So you all know that I worked with every one of you from day one. We've had a great relationship. And I want to summarize. Well, I actually wrote that speech for the minister. Yeah, because like 80% of what the minister is saying is what one would want to say because it is the truth. It is how you feel, how we feel about the service and the thank yous for you guys. But I want to sum it up in one statement. Hurricane Irma. We all had 1 million families out there, totally devastated. We all had our own families. And by 8, 9 o'clock that morning, we were all in this building, bailing water to ensure that the public, the general, and government could continue. You guys were here. When we had our own things to do and look at our own windows, doors, and roofs. We bailed water. We opened the building for internet for the general public because we had a generator. We had hundreds of people outside. You guys controlled it.
Of dedicated service and contributions made to the government of St. Martin, I present to Mr. Louis Hughes, the Honorable Prime Minister of St. Martin, being Luc Marcelina, is presenting you this beautiful memoir, actually, in the form of this speech, to actually, for you to have a point every time that you can go back and say, I have been there and I have proven that 35 years dedication is possible. And once more, thank you very, very much. For Mr. Boosman, not the same because every person is different, but the general base message is the great thank you and respect and recognition for what you have done for the people of St. Martin in general, and of course the Ministry of General Affairs under my lead as Prime Minister of this country in the recognition of your 35 years of service. We want to thank you with this plea also as something that you can also always look back to and say, as I said to Mr. Hughes, I have been there. I have proven to the people of St. Martin that discipline and dedication 35 years is possible. And for that, great respect and thank you very, very much. For the fact that you have the reputation to be here 24/7, always there, ready to help everybody. It's never an extra effort for you to say yes, and whenever we need you, you are here. And you have not been 35 years on the working hours that we expect you to be here, but you have always been here 35 years in the hours that we did not expect you to be here. And I think that's a big honor for me as Prime Minister to have civil servants like you that really go the extra mile in your call for your country to serve your people and to make sure that there is always security in government for whoever comes in this building. And for you the same from the Ministry of General Affairs. In my name as Prime Minister, once more I want to honor you, I want to thank you, and I want to really give respect to your commitment, also 24/7 in the past 35 years. And I said it's a legacy what you're leaving behind, and we are grateful and we are proud to have people like you living and working in our St. Martin. And for that, thank you very, very much.
SXV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXV is cardless. Request your My SXV account today and enter the virtual office of SXV. Go to SXV.SX and sign up now.
Your social health insurances.
Barbados has had its largest second quarter economic growth since 1998. This has been revealed by Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Kevin Greenidge, who is reporting a 4.5% growth for the period. He says one of the major driving factors is an uptick in tourism. Rachel Agard attended that press conference and filed this report.
Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Kevin Greenidge, has given a stellar report on Barbados's economic performance for the first half of the year. And he's confident the remainder of 2024 will see just as much growth, barring an unwanted phenomenon. He says the improvement is spread throughout the economy and other economic variables reflect the same.
We had a moderation of the inflation rate over the 12-month period, moderating to 2.7%. Unemployment rate continued to ease down, falling 2 percentage points to 6.9%. That's the unemployment rate. On the fiscal side, government fiscal operations resulted in a surplus on the primary account of roughly $509 million, or 3.5% of GDP.
Additionally, the governor says the last 6 months recorded the largest first-half tourism performance on record, with 18% growth.
If I start with one of the CARICOM market, you have a 20% increase from 35,000 to 42,000 tourists. Other strong market improvement, Canada, the Canadian market, 20% increase, and this is the first half. The U.S. market had the largest increase, increasing by 45%, moving from just 82,000 to 120,000 tourists on island. And this, of course, reflected the strong performance in terms of the ICC Men's World Cup cricket. And also, we had increased airlift capacity. Now, the UK market is interesting. We had 136,000 tourists, roughly, compared to 137, so a slight decline, not much.
And Dr. Greenidge says this exceptional first-half performance has translated to growth across all broad-based sectors, including construction, manufacturing, agriculture, business, and other services. This resulted in $7.3 billion in gross domestic product compared to $6.8 billion for the same period last year. However, the governor remains concerned there is not enough investment, specifically on the private sector's part.
I think investors are confident in the economy. We've yet to see some of that confidence to translate into investment in key areas.
And with the inflation rate down to 2.7% from 4.2% for the same period last year, some Barbadians remain concerned those savings have not been translated to them in terms of spending power.
What is the kind of inflation rate we would expect for a country like Barbados? Historically, it's averaged between 2.5% and 3%. Right? And there's a reason for that. It's because we have a fixed exchange rate. And not getting too technical, and when you have a fixed exchange rate, you kind of import the inflation dynamics of the country which you are paid to.
But Dr. Greenidge says in some instances,